What's up, guys? It's Jeb, and we are back for part 2 of preparing for the SoRare NBA Championship Chase. Now, if you haven't watched the first video, go ahead and check it out in the pop-up right here, and I'll also leave a link in the description below. In that video, we reviewed this blog that SoRare released about the Championship Chase and all the details surrounding it, and we talked a little strategy for the first game week for the play-in games. So if you haven't watched the first video, or at least read through the blog, I highly recommend you pause this video and go and watch the video that is in the description below. You will definitely get the most out of this video if you have the full context for the upcoming SoRare NBA Championship Chase. Also, real quick, make sure to drop a like both on the previous video and this video, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. All right, so now that we got all of that out of the way, let's start talking about strategy when it comes to your collection. Let's go ahead and start off with the common cards. Now, if you've been playing NBA SoRare this season, you've probably amassed a pretty decent collection of common cards. As you can see, I have 87, which should be more than enough to fill out my contest lineups for all of the playoffs. However, as I start to scroll through my collection, it doesn't take long for me to see a couple players that will not be playing in the playoffs. As you can see, I have Schroeder, Wiseman, Claxton, Jalen Green, Amon Thompson. There's quite a few to choose from here. And unfortunately, in a little over a week, these cards are going to be completely useless to me. So what I've started to do, and if you haven't done this already, you should do so yourself, is swap your cards. Every 24 hours, you're allowed to swap a common card for another card in that same card's tier. So unfortunately, I just did my swap, as you can see. But let's, for example, say I wanted to swap my Jalen Green. He's got a cap of 48, so he's probably a higher tier card. I would get the option of about 5 other common cards that I could swap to. And I would get to choose one of the 5, and I would lose my Jalen Green, and I would get another card. Now, obviously, you want to have these cards as long as possible because it allows you to rack up that bonus percentage points, which is very important during these playoff competitions because the pool of players that you can play in a lineup is going to get smaller and smaller. So these bonus percentage points are really going to be a difference maker. So, like I said, what I've started to do is just if I have a player that I know is not going to be playing much longer, I'm going to go ahead and swap him to try and get a player that will be in the playoffs. And I'll even go ahead and pick a player that may not be as good as the player I'm making the swap for because I know they're going to be in the playoffs. For example, if one of my swap options for Jalen Green was Austin Reeves, I would go ahead and make that swap. Even though Jalen Green is the better SoRare player, Austin Reeves is going to be probably in the play-in and probably in at least one round of the playoffs. Jalen Green has 1 or 2 game weeks left, and then he is unable to make any contribution to my lineups moving forward. So that would be my first tip of advice, is just to make sure you're doing your swaps every day. Log in, just pick players that are not going to be in the playoffs and go ahead and swap them. As you can see, I got Trey Murphy through a swap recently, as well as Lively and Barnes maybe as well. But as you can see, as we scroll through my cards, you do have a lot of players here that should be playing in the playoffs and hopefully playing some pretty meaningful minutes. All right, so as you can see, 24 hours has elapsed, and now I have another free swap to use. So let's go ahead and use my free swap, and let's go ahead and pick a player that will not be going into the playoffs. And I'm going to go ahead and pick Delano Banton here. He is on the Portland Trailblazers, and I think we can probably get a decent swap for him here. Ooh, okay. So I already have Derek Lively, Trey Murphy, and Aaron Gordon. So the 2 considerations would be CJ McCollum and Drew Holiday. And I think since I already have Trey Murphy, and I think I might also have another Pelican, we're going to go ahead with Drew Holiday. I'm going to hit select card, and then I am going to make this swap, which can't be undone. So make sure when you're choosing a swap that it's one that you really want to make. And just like that, I have a Drew Holiday card ready for the championship chase. All right, so now that we talked about the common free contest, let's go ahead and graduate into the limited, rare, all the paid contests. As I just mentioned when we were talking about these commons, I think this bonus percentage will obviously play a bigger and bigger role as we go further on through the playoffs because the pool of players available will be less and less. And so there will be more and more overlap in the contests. Now, with these commons, all we can do to increase that percentage is to go ahead and put them in training lineups and make sure they're gaining XP every game week. However, when it comes to our limited and our rares, we can actually go ahead and go over here to my club and scroll down to our collections section. And as you can see, this here shows all of the team collections that I've started. We have our 23-24 Boston Celtics limited, our 22-23 Boston Celtics rare, and then the limited from that same previous season as well. And if we scroll through, we'll see all these teams. And if a team is popping up here, all that means is I have at least one card in that given collection. We can see how many cards of the collection I have, my rank, my overall score, and the bonus percentage that I get from that collection. That's the important part. That's the part we're focused on here. So as you can see, I have a 3% bonus with my Spurs collection here, which, not going to be helpful going into the playoffs, but that's probably one of my higher ones from last year. So real quick, let's scroll to the top here. There's this handy dandy how points work, and it shows how you can get different points in order to gain the maximum collection bonus here. So you get 10 points if the card is in your collection. You get 10 points if the card has not been listed or transferred in the last 90 days. If you are the first owner of this card, that means if you get it as a reward or if you buy it off an auction or maybe like a buy it now, you'll get an additional 20 points. If it's a special edition design, you'll get an additional 20 points for that. If it's a number one cereal or a jersey cereal, you'll get 30 points for either of those. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to that Spurs collection of mine because I think this is the best way to kind of show it because some of these are filled out. So as you can see up here, up top, it shows that we have 10 out of the 22 that are needed. I currently have a bonus of 3%, and I'm about halfway to that 4% bonus right here. And then if I go ahead and look at this collection I have, it actually shows me the points on the cards that I have. So for example, a lot of these are 20s because I own them and I haven't listed or transferred them in 20 days. Jeremy Sohan is 60 points here because not only do I own this card and haven't listed or transferred it in 90 days, I bought this card off the auction. And since it's a rookie card, it qualifies as a special card. So 60 points right there is a pretty big deal. But as you can also see, it shows the cards that I don't have in my collection and the current floor price for them. So Dominic Barlow here is pretty cheap. If I wanted to give myself a little bump here, that would definitely be an easy way to do that. Same thing with this Dieng card, only 66 cents. And there are quite a few guards here that I could fill in for a pretty cheap amount, and it wouldn't break the bank, and I'd be able to increase that bonus percentage. Now, obviously, there's no point in me doing that because the season's almost over and the Spurs won't be in the playoffs. So now that we've taken a look at the collections page and you have an idea of how the point system works, let's go ahead and talk about some additional details. Now, these details are not only to help you boost your percentage score here, but it's to make sure that you don't possibly waste money trying to boost this and not actually getting the points you need. The first important thing to realize is that you do not get additional points if you have more than one of the same card. So for example, I have 2 Jeremy Sohan cards, but I only get 60 points, even though I have 2 Jeremy Sohan cards that are both rookie cards and I have held since last season. I'm only getting 60 points. I don't get 120 points for having 2 of them. I believe I have 2 or 3 Pirtles. I believe I know I have 2 or 3 Jordan Halls, and I think I might have 2 Trey Jones, but I'm only getting the points for 1 card. So the obvious reason for this is SoRare doesn't want you to just stack one of the cheaper players just so you can get the maximum bonus for maybe your best card. So let's go ahead and take a look at a different team. Let's go ahead and take a look at this year's Golden State Warriors team. Now, as you can see, I only have 2 cards in this collection, but I am already getting that bonus 1%. But one of my 2 cards is a Steph Curry, an MVP caliber player for a SoRare lineup, especially going into the playoffs. He's a player that has a high ceiling and can put up a pretty high score. So getting an extra 5% on the points he scores could be huge, especially, if they make it to the second or third round in the playoffs. However, I can't go ahead and boost this to 5% just by stacking Lester Quinones here, or stacking, Dario Saric or Kevin Looney or Corey Joseph. I'm only going to get points from one of the cards I own. Now, I think it's a really good thing that SoRare does this, because otherwise the cheapest and kind of most irrelevant players would have their floor prices boosted, and in some cases they might be worth more than even some of the actual role players that consistently play. Because as you can see, there's not a big difference here between Dario Saric and Andrew Wiggins. So if someone started stacking Darios to boost their Steph Curry, him being priced over Andrew Wiggins wouldn't make a lot of sense. However, on the flip side, as you can see, when you look at all these cards that I'm missing and the prices, there's an obvious card that costs significantly more than the rest, and that is Rudy Gay. And that is because he is the bottleneck for this team set. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what I mean by a bottleneck, basically it just means that out of all the players here, Rudy Gay has the least amount of cards that were released this season. All right, so now that we've taken a look at the team collection for the Warriors for this year and kind of seen an example of a very obvious bottleneck, I want to go ahead and take a look at two more teams to kind of help further expand our understanding of it. And those two teams are going to be the LA Clippers and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, if you remember, the LA Clippers traded for James Harden pretty early in the season to the 76ers, and that involved quite a few different players. Two of those players were Kenyon Martin and Robert Covington, who were on the Clippers and were sent over to the 76ers. Additionally, Marcus Morris Sr. was included in that trade, and Nicholas Batum. Now, the way that SoRare works is that when a player is traded or a player is cut from a team or whatever, they stop making cards of that player for that team. So when this Harden trade went down, SoRare stopped making KJ Martin, Robert Covington, Marcus Morris Sr., and Nicholas Batum Clipper cards and started making cards of them on the 76ers. Now, even though I own a Robert Covington card from this year, it only counts for whatever team that card is for. So, for example, I have a Robert Covington here on the Clippers, but if we go to the 76ers, we can see that I don't have a Robert Covington that is counted towards my collection bonus. Now, I do have a KJ Martin, but as you can see, he's in a 76ers uniform. Also, if I scroll down, we can see that I don't have a Batum on the 76ers either here. All right, so now we've kind of discussed collections and collection bonuses and bottlenecks, so you should have a better idea of how all this works and how you can utilize this for the upcoming championship chase. However, as you're scrolling through these teams trying to figure out what collections you might want to attack, you might be asking, well, how many of these bottlenecks exist? Like, how rare is this card? Is it worth me trying to get if I think this team might go far? So let's take a look at the Boston Celtics. I think they're a good example because a lot of people think they're going to be making it to the finals. All right, so now that we've pulled up the collection, let's go ahead and scroll the cards that are needed and see if there's any one that stands out as the possible bottleneck. So Porzingis is 20, but, he's a star, so that's probably not the bottleneck, and he's been on the team the whole time. He hasn't missed significant time because of injuries or anything like that. Same thing with Jaylen Brown here. But we do see Delano Banton at $12, which seems a little high, and we know that he was traded to the Portland Trailblazers. So now you might be wondering, well, how many Bantons are there? And specifically, how many Boston Celtics Bantons are there? Now, unfortunately, SoRare doesn't provide this number super easily, and as far as I know, it's not easily accessible checking on a third-party site like SoRare Data either, but we can go ahead and click this find button, which is below the card that we want to look at. I know my camera's blocking it, but you can see it below all the other cards here. So we're going to go ahead and click find on Banton, and it's going to pull up the Bantons that are available for sale. Now, as you can see, there are currently two Celtics Delano Bantons for sale, but I would have to imagine there are more than just 2 that are out there. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of the cards on sale filter, and that is going to pull up all of the Celtics Delano Bantons. As you can see, there are quite a few more. In fact, there are 81 that are available that are limited, and there are 9 rare that are available. So if you're trying to build out your rare collection bonus, getting a Delano Banton might be significantly harder than getting a limited. So by going to that collection page and hitting that find button, you can kind of figure out how easy it might be to get, some of the more expensive or more rare cards out of the whole team collection and see if it's really worth going for. In this case, since the Celtics are favored to go to the finals and there are a pretty decent amount of Bantons out there, I think you have a pretty decent chance at landing a Banton by just sending out a few offers and seeing if someone bites, and then using that Banton along with your other Celtics cards to hopefully get the maximum boost percentage for your star players like your Tatums, your Kristaps Porzingises, and your Jaylen Browns. Like I said before, as the playoffs go on, that player pool is going to get smaller and smaller. So at the beginning, you might be competing with very few Tatums as people elect to use, Jokic or Giannis or Joel Embiid as their MVP. But if we get to the finals and the Celtics are in it, there's a really good chance you're going against a lot more Jason Tatums. And that 5% bonus could really be the difference maker on where you land on the championship chase leaderboard when it's all said and done. And just as I finished that last part, my computer unfortunately crashed. So we've switched over to the laptop here. But I actually think that's kind of the perfect way to end this video since we did cover quite a lot. We talked about how to prepare for the championship chase and took a deeper dive into the collections and the collection bonus. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. Or just go ahead and let me know how you're preparing for the NBA SoRare playoffs. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next video. Please clap.